Welcome to Learning Outcome 4 of Unit 501, Be Able to Prepare for Customer Procurement. There are a number of learning outcomes for this particular learning outcome. 4.1 is explain how to maintain and update own knowledge of customer industry sectors. 4.2, evaluate how your own organisation can influence the criteria customers use to select suppliers. 4.3, conduct research into the attractiveness and compatibility of the customer to your own organisation. 4.4, identify existing suppliers of customers and conduct a competitor analysis to identify your own organisation's strengths and weaknesses. 4.5, identify strategies for achieving preferred supplier status. 4.6, evaluate existing contracts between competitors and the customer. And lastly, 4.7, evaluate your own organisation's contractual practices relating to determine supply terms and conditions. So, let's go on to 4.1. And learning outcome 4.1 is explaining how to maintain and update your own knowledge of customers' industry sectors. Now, when dealing with any key account, it is important to keep up to date in your sector. Some of the ways to achieve this could be trade reports, could be press, could be secondary research, could be customer research, or it could be through social media. 4.2, evaluate how own organisations can influence the criteria customers use to select suppliers. Now, being proactive as a key account manager is crucial when influencing the procurement process. There are various ways that you can influence customers when they are in the process of selecting suppliers. Some of these would be under the area of communication, thought and industry leaders. Becoming a thought leader within your sector could be instrumental in building substantial business. To become a thought leader, you need to start with a strategy. From there, you could create thought leadership products that you communicate to your target audience. So something we highly recommend is people listen to people who are experts. So how do you become an expert in your sector? How do you put out there that actually you're the person to come to when people need to know something? That will create credibility for yourself and your organisation. So absolutely, thought leadership is a huge area for you to consider. The second area within communication is the world of social media. Now, this will include publishing articles, writing blogs. What about trade journals? Do you contribute towards trade journals? And of course, within the area of social media. So, are you putting out Twitter accounts? Are you a regular contributor to LinkedIn? Are you getting out there? Are you somebody that I'm constantly seeing within my particular sector? If so, I may be more likely to take your call when you, in fact, give me that call. Secondly, service. A couple of the areas that we can discuss here is how do you differentiate your service will influence how your customer sees you. So, for example, the backup of guarantees, service level agreements, quality auditing, all of these things will absolutely influence the way that the customer views you. So do you have quality standards? Do you have guarantees in place? What are your SLAs? It's absolutely vital that you differentiate yourself from everybody else, because that is how customers will compare you. Moving on. Conducting research into the attractiveness and compatibility of the customer to your organisation. Yes, we know that we want to win the customer's business, but actually, let's turn that on its head. Is the customer's business right for you? One of the things that we potentially could do is to review your corporate objectives. Is this organisation aligned with your organisation? If you were to win the business, can the customer be won and managed successfully and profitably? There's one thing sales going out to win it, but can delivery actually deliver? If not, do you know what? You'll just win the order once and you'll never get it back again. So absolutely we need to understand exactly, is this business right for you? And if you do win it, can you deliver it? So some of the areas to consider would be, for example, product suitability. Do you have the expertise in-house? Or would you need to develop new products and services? If you do need to develop new products and services, have you built that in to your cost structure? Okay, winning it's fine. But if you now need to develop new innovative ideas, plans, products and services, that's going to start eating into your margins. So do you have the suitability right now? And if you need to find it, have you costed that? Secondly, size and capability. Are you big enough to cope? You know, we often hear, you know, small enough to care, large enough to cope. Well, are you large enough to actually cope with this contract? If you're quoting for government tenders, often, well, always, you'll need to say how big you are. And, you know, rarely will anyone ever give you any work if the size of the contract is at least half as much as your turnover. So are you big enough to deliver this? Do you have the manpower to deliver this project? Okay. Margins. Will you make enough money on this project to make it worthwhile? Is it sustainable? Can you actually carry on delivering to the standard, to the service level that you've promised based on the money that you're going to be earning? If not, it may not be worthwhile. Service costs. Are there any hidden costs that you haven't identified? Okay, you may have a good working model at the moment. It may be profitable. You may be making a margin. But are there any hidden costs that you simply just haven't factored in? And if you try and charge extra for that, the customer, quite frankly, is going to say, you didn't pitch for that. So it needs to be within the proposal. If it isn't, are there any hidden costs that you haven't identified? And lastly, let's take these two together. Competitors, their pricing, their service product. How are your competitors going to respond when they know that you're bidding for this business? Okay, are they going to start to compete on price? Will they start to develop new products that could outcompete the ones that you currently have? Is it worth winning if your competitors start to play around like this? So again, one of the things to consider when you're looking at the procurement process. Okay, on to learning outcome 4.4. Identify existing suppliers of customers and conduct a competitor analysis to identify own organisation's strengths and weakness. So now that we've decided that the account is right for us, we now really need to drill down. We touched it on the last slide, but we need to drill down who else is going to be bidding for this business. So Davison's 7 steps drill to competitor analysis goes like this. First of all, identify current and future competitors in the market. Major competition consists of products or services that the customer regards as a viable alternative. It follows that the product may have different competitors in different segments of the market. The identifier of a company or brand's major competition should be reviewed, therefore, regularly, because the situation obviously changes from time to time. But beware, don't just keep tabs on the usual competition, but also watch out for newcomers that lurk in unsuspected corners and are using new technologies or distribution systems. We've spoken earlier in this unit around Porter's 5 forces. So it's not just about rivalry within your current sector. It's about those new players that may be coming in. Maybe even substitute products will take out the need for your product in the first place. Okay, moving on. Competitors' objectives. What are the investment priorities, objectives and goals of the company's major competitors? Knowing what your competitors have done in the past can provide many, many clues as to what they are likely to be doing in the future. The attitudes and philosophies of your competition deserve careful, close study. With successful competitors, these attitudes tend to be deeply ingrained into the culture, and they tend therefore not to change an awful lot. So for example, for many years, General Electric's objective was market leadership, to become number one or number two in every single market that they entered. If you could accurately determine GE's market scope, you knew that that was their objective. Any company with a strategy is readable, and any company without a strategy is also readable in the sense that you know that they would not pursue a charter course. Okay, so really have a look at the website, understand what are their values, what's their mission, what are their goals. Do they have a 5-year goal? Are they looking at 2020? What exactly does this strategy tell you about this company? Because that will give you an idea as to how that may affect your standing in that marketplace. Moving on to number 3, the importance of the market. So how important is your company's specific market to each competitor? And what is the level of its commitment? Each competitor is likely to defend or improve its position in markets targeted by your company. The factors influencing the level of competitive commitment to a product or category are percentage of company profits in this category. It could be within your certain country or worldwide. Whether or not the category is perceived as a growth area, management attitude towards growth, profit margins, all of these areas will affect the importance of this market. And depending on how important the market is to your competitor will depend on how fiercely they defend their position. So beware. Number 4, competitive strengths and weaknesses. What are their strengths? What are their limitations? When measuring your competitors, it's important to use your own business as a yardstick. In what respect is each competitor better or worse than your company? So think about your strengths, think about your weaknesses, and do a bit of a gauge. Are they better than you, are they worse than you? So make a list, a bit of a pros and cons against each particular area, each particular competency of your organisation. Which of these strategies are working, which strategies are not working? Is it safe to assume that the former will be continued and the latter will be changed? So is it fair to assume that anything they're doing well is going to continue, but anything that isn't is going to be changed? What are they up to? What are they doing? What are they doing to make amends for things they're not doing so well? And what are the things that they're absolutely superb at? Number 5, what makes them vulnerable? Now we start getting interesting, because what weaknesses do they have that actually undermine their competitiveness? Knowing what the weak spots are, give your company the trump card. You can then attack the competitors with your strongest forces at their weakest points. Okay? So, what makes them vulnerable? Does that therefore give your organisation an indication as to what your strategy should be? Okay, where do you need to improve? Do you need to buy in resource to be able to compete and maximise on their vulnerabilities? Number 6, likely changes to competitors' strategy. So you've got a good understanding of what their current strategy is, but how may that change in the future? This question will usually answer itself if the first 5 questions have been thoroughly analysed. However, it's worthwhile at this stage estimating where competitive divisions or brands stand in the portfolio analysis of the group to which they belong. Are they seen as strong investment candidates? Are they cash cows? Where exactly are they? Okay, are the areas within this business that's vital? So what is the change that could happen? And lastly, effects on competitor strategy on the market. What effects will all your competitor strategies have on the industry, on the market, and on their strategy, and on your strategy? What is going to happen based on all of the above? Understanding competitive positioning from a comprehensive perspective of the future direction of the industry gives your company the big picture analysis against which to formulate its own strategy to create competitive advantage. So the Davison tool is a really good tool to simply understand your competitor and truly get to grips with their strategy, their strengths, their weakness, and how you can truly exploit those weaknesses. Okay, moving on. This information around Davison, there are three sources, I guess, that you can get that information. Davison identified that these were the three areas that you could analyse the organisations. One, there is recorded data published from either internally or it could be externally. So their annual reports, their product brochures, various places that you could, in published form, get a real good understanding as to who they are and what they're trying to achieve. They could be observable data. Well, what does this mean? Well, you know, this information is actively sourced and assembled from various different places. So, for example, a good example would be competitor pricing. And then lastly, opportunistic data. Much of this is anecdotal, talking to customers, talking to industry experts, just really getting a flavour out there from people that understand the business. Could come from discussion with suppliers, customers, perhaps even management of competitors. So getting this information, whether it be in formal, written format, or just simply hearsay, will give you a good understanding as to what exactly is going on in that marketplace and with that competitor. On to 4.5, identifying strategies for achieving preferred supplier status. We discussed earlier in this unit that just being on the PSL doesn't guarantee that you'll be offered the tender exclusively. It will, however, improve your chances of being invited to pitch for the business. So to identify strategies to achieve PSL status, it's worthwhile just looking at how organisations will actually set up this list in the first place. One of them is that they get members of the decision-making unit on board with the selection process. So what are you doing to actively get involved with everybody within that decision-making process? 2, they look beyond the bottom line costs. Okay, what does that mean? Well, what else is going on? What value can you add? You know, it's just not about the money that you're going to save or the money that you're going to make. Okay, you need to get beyond that. 3, they're awarded extra points to suppliers who are willing to partner. So what does a partnership mean? What does a partnership mean to you? What does it mean to them? If it's not just a one-off hit, then what's it going to look like in a year, in 5 years' time? That will benefit both parties. They're open with their suppliers. This is where your values really kick in. So we spoke about, are you sharing the same values as that organisation? In which case, honesty will be part of that. So if you don't marry each other's values, then do you know what? Maybe it's not an ideal marriage at all. They look for innovative supplier partners. So how can you demonstrate that you will be innovative in the future? By showing what you've done in the past. So where have you been creative in working with organisations? So what we started doing today has evolved and become better for both of you in the future. They review the list regularly, but don't change it too often. So the idea of this is that, yes, we need to be innovative to come up with new ideas, but do you know what? It's not because we're not succeeding. We're building what has worked before. So it's very important that we don't constantly be reinventing the whole wheel. So 4.6, evaluate existing contracts between competitors and the customer. Well, don't just look at the competitors, look at current contracts that are in place, okay? Look at the actual detail. Can you compete with this? Do you want to compete with this? How long is the contract? How long before the end of the contract will the customer start to be reviewing for the next one? Are there any areas of the contract that you will be unwilling to fulfill? Is this area critical to winning future business? So these are the sort of areas that you need to be thinking about when you're starting to understand what's going on with the existing contract. 4.7, Evaluate own organisation's contractual practices relating to determining suppliers' T's and C's, terms and conditions. So, in addition to looking at contracts in place, how familiar are you with the T's and C's? Have you bothered to read them? Okay, if you're a true salesperson, then maybe not. Okay, that's a big overstatement. But often we're not looking at the detail. So we need to understand the T's and C's. Have you read your organisation's terms and conditions? So what are your T's and C's? How do they compare to the industry standard and anything else that's going on in other industries? And are there contractual agreements and arrangements that will actually prevent sales? And can any of these be amended to suit if necessary? So looking at the T's and C's is absolutely vital if you don't want to become a cropper a bit further down the line. A, their T's and C's, B, your T's and C's. And can anything be amended if appropriate? So, to finalise learning outcome 4, let's look at the tasks that you need to deliver. So this is all about preparing for customer procurement. So you're going to require some detailed planning, a lot of thinking. You need to detail for the selected account that we've been working on, how could your organisation create and maintain up-to-date information about the customer? How could they maintain similar information for the industry sector of the customer? How could they get information which will tell them how attractive the customer is as an account? What kind of information would this involve? Find out the kind of contracts that exist for this customer. Are they good? Are they workable? Are they profitable? Are there special contracts or standard contracts? Evaluate your own organisation's standard contracts. So what kind of contracts are in place with this organisation? Are they industry standards or are they actually bespoke because of the nature of the work that you guys do? How might you influence the criteria used by the customer decision-making unit? How might you achieve preferred supplier status to actually do this? And who else supplies similar offerings to the client? And finally, how are these different or better than your own offerings? So this whole task is truly understand in terms of preparation for customer procurement, getting a real good understanding exactly who they are, but you know what? It's also looking in the mirror and understanding who you are as well. So, as always with these tasks, please contact us. We'll give you some information as to how to complete it in the most effective way possible. And that completes learning outcome 4 for Unit 501. In our next seminar, we'll be talking about Unit 501, learning outcome 5. So until then, thank you.